Hi guys, welcome to Short Skirts and Sarcasm. I'm Caroline, and today I wanted to make a little list of all the found family tropes in books I like. So if you are wanting to check out some wholesome found family content, you have come to the correct video. So this is going to be in alphabetical order by title, as per usual, because I like organization. And the first one is 10 minutes, 38 seconds in this strange world by Elif Shafak. Elif Shafak is one of my favorite authors. No, she is my favorite author. Why just one of? She is my favorite. She's written loads of good stuff. She's written good nonfiction. She's written good fiction. So this is fiction. It follows the main character, whose name I've forgotten. I've forgotten everyone's names. Cannot remember anyone. Main character, she has worked in sex work for a number of years, and it starts with her murder. So she is murdered, dumped in a dumpster, which sucks for her, for sure. But in the 10 minutes and 38 seconds after her life has ended, her brain still is sending electrical impulses and sort of flashes back and reflects on her life. And so we get to experience her life in these flashes. So because she was not the daughter that her father wanted, she left home pretty early. She has a best friend who also leaves home. Is it because he's gay? I can't remember. But they're sort of like outcasts together. They move to the big city, and eventually because she understands what it is to be rejected, makes a lot of other friends with other people who have been rejected or overlooked in their lives for some other reason. So after her murder is discovered, all of her friends are of course incensed that the person that brought them all together to form this found family community is now gone, and not just gone, like taken from them senselessly. And they one, want to avenge her death, and two, want to keep her from being buried in essentially a pauper's grave, because none of her biological family are there to claim her body. And so they try to originally claim her body in the normal way. They're like, well, we're not, biologically bonded, but she's still our family. And the authorities are like, nope, move on. And so part of this is a heist trying to get her body back and give it what they feel to be a proper and respectful burial. So it is a wild ride. There's a lot of very colorful characters. There are funny moments. There are deeply tragic moments, but it never feels like this book is despairing. Like, there are tough things, but because these people have created their own community in a place where they're often rejected, it feels like they get through everything because of each other. And it's a really beautifully written, great book. Next, Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery. This is a children's classic. It is about Anne Shirley, a very ginger orphan who is not being adopted because she's not a cute baby anymore, and she's also super ginger. And she sees this as a sort of failing, but she's also very romantic, and she likes to romanticize her life. And so she is eventually accidentally adopted by Marilla and Matthew Cuthbert, who are siblings who run a farm in Prince Edward Island in Canada. And they want a boy to help them run the farm. They end up instead with a very ginger girl. And they're like, well, she has to go back. And Anne is very sad about that, convinces them to let her stay, and they make a really cute and wholesome family. Like, there are definitely some growing pains because Marilla is kind of old. She's very set in her ways, and I know even though the early 1900s for us is quite a different time, but for the early 1900s, Marilla is also from a different time. So she has ideas about the way society should be structured and is structured that are changing in that real world. And Anne, because she's so young and because she also is very romantic, and I've seen her described as a undiagnosed ADHD person, which I guess might be true. It's difficult to diagnose people who are not real, but I guess if you're ADHD and you read her story and I feel validated by it, then yeah, Sure. And so Anne has like very different ideas to what life should be, and there's friction, and a lot of the times it's like very wholesome friction. Like there's character growth rather than like open conflict. So we follow Anne. This is the first in a series when she's from 11 to I think the age of 16 or 17. So she goes through her school. She's very smart, and she really values education. And at first Marilla and Matthew were like, well, she's gonna get married to someone surely. And then Anne's like, but what if I also had a job? And they're like, oh, maybe. And the rest of the series follows her journey, like sort of growing up and getting married and having children of her own while being sort of a new woman, and her continuing relationship with her sort of adopted parents. And I have read, I think, most of the books, whatever was available at my public library growing up. I haven't read all of them. I would like to finish the series. And I've reread the first book in the series, which is, of course, Anne of Green Gables, multiple times, and it never gets old. It's great. I love it so much. And yeah, would recommend. Would also recommend the Megan Follows movie. I think pretty great. Next, I want to recommend One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. This is a romance book, but sort of the secondary plot to the main romance is the main character moving to New York City to finish her degree and graduate. She moves into a house of very eclectic friends, and they sort of become her family and help her try to make this romance work, because the person that she has fallen in love with is a 1970s woman trapped in the subway. So she can only see her on the train, not elsewhere. So they work together to try to free this woman from literally just the train. And where she works as well, is it a pancake house? It's a diner, which also has an eclectic mix of patrons and staff, and they also become her found family, which is really nice because as we learn more about the main character's backstory, she often feels like she's been moving around a lot, she's rootless, and she doesn't have the same type of family structure that she sees a lot of other people have, and she feels like she doesn't really fit in. So she does find a home, find a found family, and it's great. It's also really wholesome as a romance and has a lot of very funny moments. Casey McQuiston is a very good comic writer. Next, I want to recommend Ray Bear by Jordan Ifueko and the second book in this duology, Redemptor. I've read them both now and loved them. So the first book is about Tarisai, who has been raised by the lady who is sort of a shadowy, distant mother figure. And eventually she realizes that she's been raised in a specific way with a like specific curse, so that when she goes to the capital to become the or try to become one of the crown prince's trusted counsel, she's supposed to kill him. And so there's this internal conflict going on, but when she arrives at the capital, she meets all the other people who will also be in this this council. They are all sent there as children, and so they bond quite early in life. And you see them grow up, and they have, you know, really good, what seems like a sort of sibling dynamic, and work well together as a family. So the writing in this is great. I really enjoyed it. Then I want to recommend The Diviners by Libba Bray, because no recommendation list of mine can go by without a Libba Bray book on it. She is one of my favorites. Her writing is so good. So The Diviners is set in the 1920s. Evie gets sent by her parents in Ohio to her uncle in New York, who runs a weird curiosity museum. They call it the Creepy Crawly Museum because it's just kind of creepy. And her parents are like, she's out of control, fix her please. And I am not sure what their logic is, because they're sending like essentially like a flapper new woman to New York. So of course she's gonna get into like loads of trouble. She likes living the high life. She likes going out. Her parents aren't into that. And her uncle is like, okay, well, you can do whatever that is, but you also need to help out around the museum. And she was like, okay, I guess. So what they don't know is that Evie has the power to divine things about people by touching their stuff they own. And this draws her into a very dramatic serial killer murder mystery. So while she's doing that, she also comes into contact with a lot of other people who also seem to have like weird powers going on. And this is the first in a series. So throughout the series, they do form a sort of found family dynamic, and it's great. And what I love about Libba Bray's writing in particular is not just her writing style, but that in every single one of her books, there is some sort of queer rep, there is some sort of disabled rep. There's always discussions on race and racism, because a lot of her fantasy is sort of set in the past. She very much sees it as her, maybe not responsibility, but she sees it as important to not whitewash that history. So all the characters that are in this sort of come together and help find the serial killer that is plaguing the streets of New York City and seems to have a sinister motive for the supernatural. And they're like, that sounds bad, and then do something about it. So that's just the first book. In the second book, there's a sort of pandemic plague that I talked about in my best pandemic books video, and then they have to face down essentially the devil himself in the third and fourth books. And it's a great adventure story, and it's also a really great friendship story and found family story. Then I want to recommend The Gilded Ones by Noma Forna, and this is a great book about a girl who, instead of bleeding red like she is supposed to, has gold blood. So she is going to be murdered, I think, but then this woman shows up and is like, you could get murdered, or you could join my clan of women warriors instead. And so she's like, you know what, that sounds better than death. You're right. And so she goes to join this all-female group of warriors, and they eventually very much like become her sisters. And they face down a shadowy threat to the kingdom. And so there's this external conflict, but there's also a great internal conflict, because the way the society is structured, it's very patriarchal, and girls are very much taught that they are less than. And so the internal struggle of this is all of the girls in this warrior group finding their inner strength and realizing that the religion in which they have been brought up is maybe wrong about them and is wrong about a lot of other things. And then the last book on this list is The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter by Theodora Goss. This is a sort of ensemble cast of characters from classic horror and science fiction writing. Sherlock Holmes is in it. Who else is in it? The daughter of the guy from the island of Dr. Moreau. You don't need to have read these classic books to enjoy this, but essentially the daughter of Dr. Jekyll meets this girl after the death of her mother, who says she is the daughter of Mr. Hyde, and they are sisters. So that starts off this like ensemble adventure cast. So eventually like more people join, and it's the first in a series. I haven't read the rest of it, but I will soon, because I enjoyed this book. And it has quite a dramatic turn, and there's a bit of heisting, a bit of dueling, lots of action, and lots of like sisterly bonding, which is great if you're looking for a found family. So that concludes my list of found family in books. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoy these books. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye guys.